Hello and welcome to Natasha Explains It All. Today's episode is going to be along the same lines as the prior episode about being part of the solution, because I really believe that there are a lot of ways that we can make the world a better place. And it is very much in the interest of the powers that be that we feel disenfranchised, that we feel apathetic, that we feel disconnected, and so that we don't change things, that we don't push for better. And I think it's actually very much an act of hope to participate in making things better, even if it's not going to change everything, even if it's not going to change anything overnight. um, I have found for myself that it is something that keeps me going, to know that I do have the power and the ability to do something. And I really want to transmit that message. And we all have the capacity to do that. And I want to provide examples and share personal stories to help illustrate that. So, the initiative that I want to share with folks today, like the prior episode, is a hyper local example focusing on Oakland, California, which is called Activate Oakland. Activate Oakland is a new initiative by the city of Oakland to provide funding for free community events to promote people occupying public spaces, having community events, and having residents of Oakland feel safe and supported, and uh, investing in the community. And through Activate Oakland, the city is providing grants anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000, or potentially even more if you are seeking funding for a series of events. Again, to promote the creation and expansion of free community events in Oakland's commercial districts. And I will include the website for this initiative in the show notes so that you can go and find more. But if you just look up Activate Oakland, that's what it's called. And the deadline is October 12th. So that is coming up soon, but there is still time. And you can apply as an individual resident, you can apply as a group, you can apply as a business, you can apply as a nonprofit. Basically, they say that anyone with a connection to Oakland can apply for these grants. And again, with the idea being to promote the use of public spaces. And so some of the ideas that they've listed on the website of the kind of things that they would fund would include things like block parties, so that you can get to know your neighbors, free exercise classes, art shows, outdoor markets, film screenings, kids' activities, spoken word or poetry performances, a district walking tour, things like that. Those are just suggestions. The application allows you to come up with whatever ideas you may have, again, to encourage residents to come out to participate in public events and get to know other residents. And I really love this idea. And I see this as a positive effort to respond to some really serious ongoing problems that have been going on in Oakland and Alameda County more broadly, and then I think in a lot of places in the United States as well. That, in my view, we are suffering still from many ripple effects from the pandemic that we have not adequately addressed. And those ripple effects have led to an increase in folks living on the streets and an increase in property related crime. And those things have made it so people are more reluctant to be out in public, that people are more reluctant to occupy public spaces. And that's really a shame, because that is actually really counterproductive to public safety and to community well-being and to our mental health. And And I love that there is this emphasis, or this effort at least, to try to put the money towards things that actually work. Because the approach mostly so far has just been, at least on the issue of folks living on the streets, has been to, bring in the police and to clear out encampments, which will never solve the problem, because the problem is underlying social reasons. A lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic. A lot of people's mental health suffered very considerably. And the United States is a country without a universal healthcare system. So people losing their jobs also lost access to whatever healthcare they had. And and rents have continued to go up, and wages have remained stagnant for those who have been able to hold on to any type of job. And so that has pushed a lot of people to the streets. And I think there's many solutions. I mean, the most basic being we need to house people, but also universal basic income programs have shown to be extremely effective in addressing extreme poverty and helping get people stable and off the streets. But also investing, yeah, public dollars in making public spaces safer and more welcoming is a really good thing. I'm excited about this initiative, and I wanted to, share some examples of, what this could look like, and why this isn't just, I don't know, vibes, but this is actually something concrete. So I think I mentioned in one of my prior episodes, there is, it's not even a nonprofit. I don't even think it's formally a nonprofit, but just a group of Oakland residents called the Trash Falcons that take an area of Lake Merritt every Sunday and do cleanup. And they're called the Trash Falcons. I'll put their information in the show notes. And they would be an example of a group that would be perfect for this kind of funding. They promote a safe and welcoming activity, healthy activity for residents to engage in, a community cleanup every Sunday. And they provide all the supplies for volunteers. So they have like the grabbers, gloves, trash bags, all that stuff. So a grant like this could be awesome to help them purchase more supplies and be able to get the word out more about what they're doing. And those who participate, it's a way of building community. You feel more connected to other people, because another huge ripple effect from the pandemic is how isolated people feel. And the more isolated people feel, that again has these ripple effects of people occupying public spaces even less and feeling more and more isolated, and therefore more and more disconnected and apathetic, and potentially depressed. And that's not good across the board. So initiatives like Trash Falcons are, trying to buck that by helping empower residents to know that they can do their small part of keeping the lake beautiful. And in the meantime, you get to meet your neighbors, you get to meet other people. And I think a cynical response could be, well, that should be something the city should be doing. Like, the city should be maintaining the public parks, and I mean, I agree with that. And I would also encourage you to, look at the Oakland City budget and also see like how much money is put into that versus other departments, like the police department, which gets the lion's share of the city's budget, and their work does not involve, um, cleaning up trash, which is a huge part of making the community feel safer when it's clean, right? So, and these don't have to be mutually exclusive solutions either, right? The city should do its part, and community members can also do their part. So if that speaks to you, that is an option. And neighbors of mine and I have been talking about that. The Trash Falcons should absolutely apply for this Activate Oakland grant. I also mentioned in my prior episode about the Urban Compassion Project, which could also apply for this because they're a nonprofit and nonprofits are eligible, and they do trash cleanups around the city. And they go to encampment sites and other places where there is a lot of illegal dumping, and they do cleanups. And they work with people who are unhoused to ensure that the way that they do that is respectful of people's belongings in ways that police sweeps tend to not be, and to empower those community members to be caretakers of wherever it is that they're living. And they also do mutual aid in terms of distributing clothing and other types of supplies for people who are unhoused. So the Urban Compassion Project would be another example of, you know um, of a group that I think could benefit from the Activate Oakland grant, and also are exactly doing, I mean, are their cleanups, right? Are the events that they organize for members of the public to come together, to volunteer, to get to know each other, build community, and make the city safer and more beautiful in the process. And I know I've just given a couple of examples of other organizations or initiatives, but I also want to share a personal story. And I think it's the first time that I have talked about this on the podcast. But I think I, as well, have personally experienced the fallout from the pandemic, in terms of the instability that it has produced. And what I mean is that last year I was mugged in Oakland on a Sunday in the middle of the day, walking through my neighborhood with a friend. We were just going to brunch, and it was at gunpoint. And fortunately, my friend and I were not physically harmed, and we're okay. And we were very, very lucky that the entire episode lasted a matter of seconds, and we got help right afterwards. And the only thing that the people who robbed us wanted were our credit cards, because that's what they went and started using that very same day. And as a result of this traumatic experience, um, I, naturally was fearful about walking around in my own neighborhood again. And I live in a nice area. And I knew that I didn't want to be afraid to walk around my own neighborhood, and that I didn't want to just pick up and move as a result of this. Um, I wanted to be able to continue my life. And there are many ways that I helped, that I worked on healing from this. I was able to get therapy, which is very fortunate. Not everyone does. And my biggest goal there was, when you have a traumatic event like that, it can definitely result in PTSD if you don't get help and you don't, um, treat it right away. And recognize that you will be triggered in the future. It could be a location or a sound or whatever, but you'll know by by getting support and help, that that is what's happening. And therefore, like, you can then use your self-soothing techniques and other healing techniques to talk yourself, or help get yourself out of that spiral, rather than getting into this dark place where you're feeling bad and you don't know why, because you don't know what has triggered you and why it's triggered you. And anyway, I could do a whole other episode about that. But in addition to seeking help for myself, I also was pondering, like, what can I do to help me feel safe again, in my community? And something I started doing was organizing monthly neighborhood walks around my neighborhood for neighbors. And the idea being that it would be a way for me, there's like a concept of exposure therapy, of exposing yourself again to whatever it is was scary or harmed you, but doing it in a constructive and healthy way, so you're not just re traumatizing yourself. And so I just thought of this idea as a way to not only heal and empower myself, but also to actually the incident itself brought this idea to me because even though it was really horrible, my neighborhood is a place where people are often outside, often walking through the neighborhood. And there was someone who witnessed what had happened. And she came over and helped my friend and me in the aftermath. And she and I ended up becoming friends. And she also lived in the neighborhood, so she's one of my neighbors. And to me, this was a really cool thing and a silver lining. And it made me think, okay, it definitely helps to know your neighbors more and to be able to recognize faces as you're walking through the neighborhood. And you're more likely to help people if you know who they are, right? And so I started these monthly neighborhood walks. We get together on the first Monday of the month the same location every time, and we just do a different route around the neighborhood each time. It really doesn't last that long. We meet at the corner and introduce ourselves so people know each other's names, and if they want to share something more about like how long they've lived in the neighborhood, or any experiences they'd like to share, or any news about what's happening in the neighborhood they'd like to share. It's an opportunity for that. And then we go on a walk. And it's been really positive. It's not going to solve everything, um, but it but it's a positive, right? It is a positive thing to get to know more of your neighbors, to do it with a healthy activity, and to say, like, this is our neighborhood. We believe in it and we want to invest in it and we want to feel safe walking through it. And we're going to do that with strength in numbers. And so I wanted to throw that out there as an example and a personal example of, yeah, it's a small thing. Like, no, it's not going to solve everything at all. Like, it may not even prevent any crime, but it would make, I think it's making our neighbors feel less isolated, and certainly me. And it's so fun to be able to to see neighbors coming, each time, and to recognize faces and to build that sense of community. And I have one neighbor, for example, who struggles with walking. He's elderly, and every time he comes, he's like, I'm really not sure if I'm going to be able to make it the whole way. And obviously all of this is completely voluntary, so there's no pressure to finish the walk or anything. But every time, he starts chatting with the other people on the walk, and he always finishes. And that's cool. So, another thing that has come out of these walks is I was contacted by another resident of Oakland who lives in another neighborhood who was interested in starting walks in her neighborhood as well. And we had a really nice conversation about the issues that her neighborhood was facing, and thoughts that she had about how to organize this, and wanted to brainstorm with me about how it had worked for our neighborhood, and what would work to replicate there, and what would need to be modified. And I didn't start these with the intention of having these kind of ripple effects. Really didn't know where it would go, but very cool to see this happening, and it hopefully creating more sense of community and safety in yet another place in Oakland. So again, this idea of public spaces, community-based events, free for people to participate in, and how that is helping to foster healthier communities. Anyway, I just because this um, because this initiative is um, is about activating public spaces and building community, particularly with everything going on in Oakland right now. I It just reminded me of this personal experience that I've had, and trying to do a little thing to make things better. It doesn't solve the macro problems, but we need tons of micro solutions to address the macro problem. And I know also from another experience the importance of public spaces. Like, this is a contrasting example, but um, I've talked about Brazil a lot in my podcast because I'm also a Brazilian citizen. I have lots of family in Brazil. And that has been a huge issue in the city where my family is mostly based, which is in Fortaleza. And there has been a huge initiative in the last several years to make public spaces more inviting, because crime is a huge issue in Fortaleza. There's lots of crime, and so it can be unsafe to be out and about in public spaces. And I do have to applaud the local government and businesses that are really making an effort to make public spaces safer so that people feel safe to go out and to be out. And the more that you see people out, it encourages you to be out as well. So they've introduced like the bike rental system that a lot of cities in the United States have, right? Like those stations where you can just pull out a bike and rent that. They've also revamped tons of public parks through public-private partnerships. So parks that previously were abandoned, right, and could be the site of questionable activities and nobody used. They've revitalized them so that they have, playgrounds for kids and gym equipment for adults to work out in and green space. And so like these public parks are now super popular and people are out there at well, it's very hot here, but at the hours that it's not extremely hot, exercising, playing, hanging out. That is fantastic. There's a boardwalk here as well that was used a lot. I mean, has always been used a lot, but actually during the pandemic, they did a major revamping, expanded the sidewalk, redid a lot of the infrastructure, and now it's beautiful and heavily populated. Tons of people are using it every single day. And that's amazing, right? And so it creates this sense of community, this sense of safety. It doesn't solve everything. It's not a magic bullet, but that investment in creating safe places with good lighting that are clean, with activities that are available to various age groups of the public is a really wonderful thing, and it does promote safety. Because would you rather go to a place that is looks abandoned and dirty, or a place that is clean and well lit, right? um, those things also contribute to creating a sense of safety and creating a sense of welcome. And so, anyway, I will kind of wrap up here. But Activate Oakland applications are due October 12th. Again, individuals, groups, you know, um, nonprofits, businesses can apply for this money to host free community events. And I think it's a great initiative. It's not going to solve everything. And I'm sure there's all kinds of critiques about it. But, I'd like, for what I know and what I can share about my personal experience, it seems like a positive thing. And the money's there. So people should apply. So again, Activate Oakland. And I will leave it there for today. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.